Hi, my name's Ian Wallace. I call myself the Messed Up Counsellor, which is quite an intriguing name. And the podcast you're about to see is one of many, and we've been doing about a year now. So you can look back and see all the things we've talked about with guests and on my own over the process. A lot of the information I use in the podcast initially came from the first book I wrote in 2011. Why do we do that? What do we do about it? And that came out and was the basis of all my learning, understanding at that time, which is going back a few years now. And that process of understanding how the world works for people, how we can alter, change, and adapt it, was kind of what it was there to do with the initial stages. I've made that now an audiobook as well, so it's available on Amazon as an audio file that you can check out and you can download to your heart's content, and hopefully that will be helpful. In the podcasts, we're trying to look at all sorts of things about human interactions, human dynamics, the world, and how we might understand it more or change it more. So it gives you lots of ideas and tools in order to think about and look at different ways of being or dealing with things. And hopefully that brings people together and makes people more able to connect and communicate. Lots of topics. If you ever want to connect to me, just obviously drop me a comment on the podcast and I shall try as much as possible to reply. And if you've got any ideas of things that we might want to use on the podcasts, then please let me know. My name's Ian Wallace. Thanks for looking and thanks for listening. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ian Wallace, the Messed Up Counsellor. What I'd like to do today is just share something with you that I kind of find is a common misconception when I'm working with families, and certainly with families where teenagers are concerned. And teenagers now are kind of like from probably about 9-year-old up into about 20-year-old. In my day, it was like when you were 13, you were a teenager. It's kind of like a baptism of fire. You got to 13 and all of a sudden you're a teenager. Well, were you not a teenager the day before? I don't know. But anyhow, I digress. And one of the things that people kind of say to me, parents and people who have teenagers, is that they, well, disrespectfully, they say they're lazy and they can never be filled with food. They're always raiding the fridge. And I think that's a misconception, personally, because I think if you look at it from the body, physical body, mental body process of growth, then around that kind of time when it's teenagers kind of time, then the growth is absolutely massive. It's one of the times in our life where we get spurs of growth. So the body's growing physically, so limbs are getting longer, muscles obviously are getting longer, bones are growing, the whole physical frame is massively changing. Then on top of that, if that wasn't enough, then you've got all the mental processes, all the kind of neurons and the neural pathways in the head and all those kind of things are massively increasing as well. They're taking on lots and lots of new information. So the kind of mental growth is unbelievable. Now, if you think about it, that every time we grow, anybody grows, we're using energy. Whether it's a mental growth or a physical growth, we're still using energy in order to sustain the growth. So if we're doing that spare, we're massively increasing that growth process, then consequently, we need the energy to do it. We don't have an abundance of energy unless we take food in, which creates energy, and that effort, which we probably never think about, in order to grow bones and grow muscles and grow mental processes, neural pathways and things of that nature, then all of that is taking energy. So can you imagine how tiring that must be? How drain on your energy that must be? And if you think of it in those kind of terms, then teenagers are not being lazy. They're really, really tired because everything's changing. Now, if you think on top of that, if that wasn't enough, quite naturally, then all the kind of aspects of our gender and our kind of like reproductive processes, all those things are changing as well. We're massively increasing all that. Then you can really understand why they're quite likely they're knackered. So the lying in, the not being able to do anything, resting, if you like, from that enormous spare. And the spare doesn't come at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 24/7. So that process is going to be really not easy for anybody, no matter who we are. So the laziness in my world isn't being lazy. Yes, they're having to lay in more. Yes, they're in bed more. They're not doing productive things more. But that's because they just don't have the energy to do it, because the body's sucking all the energy out of them in order to make that happen. And that isn't a choice. The body grows. We don't have a choice about the body growing and changing. That's just what it does. So that process means we can't then put that into some kind of structure of control. We are completely out of control. And all those aspects of us need fuel. And how do we get fuel? We get fuel through food. So we're going to eat more. We're going to not be able to be filled. We are going to raid the fridge at 2 o'clock in the morning because we need it. If we don't have it, then we wouldn't grow and we would be more tired. So the more we eat, the more fuel we have. The more fuel we have, the more energy. The more energy, the less tired. So if you can think of it in that way, not in the way of they're just lazy and they're staying in bed. All that brain power, all that information that we're asking them to take in as they get older and go into big school, all that new learning that we're asking them to do has to be produced through energy, whether it's just storing information. The storing information in a hard drive takes energy. So when you're looking at your teenagers, try and give them a bit of respect. Try and give them a bit of understanding. You were there once. We were all teenagers once. We were there. So that process means that you might be a bit more kind, a bit more forgiving, a bit more tolerant. Because these are the things you did when you were teenagers. I did. We all did. And we were told in them days, you're lazy, you can't be filled. That's a constant message that I hear. But it isn't because of that. It isn't because we're lazy. It isn't because we want to just gorge ourselves with food. It's because we need the energy. We need the energy to make it something that we can use to grow. And if you are a teenager watching this and listening to this, then give yourself some tolerance. Give yourself some aspect of it's okay. It's all right. It's normal. It's natural. It's what it is. And you don't have any control on it. Now, we will do growth at different times. Everybody's different. Everybody's unique. But it will be at a certain time in our world and our life. And so you might get a spare at 12, 13, for example. Or you might get a spare at 16, 17. Or you might get a spare at 20. The growing process doesn't just happen in 1 year, obviously. It happens throughout our lifetime until, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 2021. when we sort of got where we're going to get, and the growing kind of slows down or stops. So all through that time frame of growing, becoming, getting to be an adult, getting to be who we are, all that is going to take energy. All that is going to take fuel. All that is going to take time. And so just give yourself a bit of a allowance, a bit of it's okay. And hopefully we'll all grow through that process and become good quality adults. Anybody that you've got that you think this podcast might help, and because of that age, because of maybe the parents to understand it, please share it, forward it, and give people an understanding. Because the more tolerant we can be, more accepting we can be, the less arguments we'll have, the less disagreement, conflict we will have. And it'll make their transition a lot smoother from both the adult and the teenager's perspective. Hopefully that made sense. Hopefully I've got you to think of it in a different way. My name's Ian Wallace. Hi, thanks for listening to the podcast, and hopefully it made sense and was interesting for you. Please subscribe, like and share. With the podcasts, you never know who will be helped by the things we talk about, things we share. We don't normally tell people our problems, but by sharing it and helping other people to understand things. The book Insecurity, It's All About Me, is also available now through Amazon, and it gives you an understanding of what drives insecurity, how insecurity works within our human dynamics, and how you can get a much more secure connection with people. It gives you lots of ideas and thoughts, which is really good. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, share, hit the button, and if you've got any comments, please give me them, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks very much. Take care.